What happens when country music's biggest star walks into the lion's den of daytime television and refuses to back down from one of the most outspoken hosts in America? You're about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations ever captured on live TV, and trust me, you won't believe how it ends. Blake Shelton strolled onto The View, set with his trademark swagger, flashing that familiar grin as he settled into the guest chair. The audience erupted in cheers, thrilled to see the country superstar. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed him warmly. And for a while, the mood was light talk of his new album, his upcoming tour, plenty of laughs. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, her tone sharpening. "Blake, I have to ask about some comments you made recently on political correctness in the music industry. A lot of people found them controversial." Blake's smile stayed, but his voice carried an edge. "Well, Joy, I think folks are tired of being told what they can and can't say. Country music has always been about telling the truth even when it makes people uncomfortable." Joy wasn't letting up. "But don't you think artists have a responsibility? Your words reach millions." "Those millions are smart enough to think for themselves," Blake snapped back, his voice rising. "They don't need celebrities or TV hosts telling them what to believe." The tension in the studio thickened. Whoopi tried to pivot towards safer ground, asking about Blake's run on The Voice, but Joy pressed harder. "You talk about truth-telling, but country music has historically excluded so many voices. How do you reconcile that with authenticity?" Blake's jaw tightened. "You know what, Joy? You're confusing country music with something else. We've always welcomed anyone who can tell a story and mean it. We don't care about your background, we care about your heart." "Really?" Joy fired back. "Because the statistics say otherwise. The industry's been criticized for years for its lack of diversity." "Statistics," Blake repeated, shaking his head. "Out on tour, I see people from every walk of life singing the same songs, crying at the same stories, laughing at the same jokes. That's real, not numbers on a page." The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah N. tried to cut in with a lighter question, but Blake was rolling now. He pointed straight at Joy. "And furthermore, I'm sick of people like you, sitting in ivory towers, telling the rest of us how we should live and think. You don't speak for country fans, and you sure as hell don't speak for America." Joy's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, people like me. What does that mean, Blake?" "It means people who think they know better than everyone else," Blake shot back. "People who look down on small towns, who see us as ignorant hillbillies. We're not. We are the backbone of this country." The studio audience went silent. The earlier warmth was gone, replaced by a chill. "I have never called anyone ignorant," Joy defended herself sharply. "But yes, we need honest conversations about representation and inclusion. Honest conversations." Blake laughed bitterly. "Is that what this is?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like an interrogation. You invited me to talk music, but all you want is politics." The cameras caught every second as the standoff escalated. Joy slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing across the room. "You know what, Blake? I've been doing this for decades. I don't need some country singer telling me how to do my job." Blake leaned back, his smile turning sharp. "And I don't need a talk show host who's never set foot in Nashville lecturing me about my industry. You want inclusion. Fine. Tell me this: when's the last time this show had a country artist on who wasn't grilled about politics?" "That's not true." Joy shot back. "We've had plenty." "Name 3, Blake challenged, folding his arms. 3 country artists in the last 2 years. Joy opened her mouth, then froze. Her eyes darted, searching for names that wouldn't come. The audience gasped. The cameras zoomed in. The silence was deafening, and that's when everyone realized this wasn't just an interview. This was a showdown, The pause was deafening. "That's what I thought," Blake said finally, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You don't actually care about country music or the people who pour their hearts into it. You just use us as punching bags whenever it fits your agenda." Whoopi quickly leaned forward, her hands raised in an attempt to calm the storm. "Blake, let's all take a step back here." I think everyone's getting a little heated, but Blake cut her off, his Oklahoma drawl thickening as his frustration spilled over. "No, Whoopi. I'm done taking steps back. I'm done watching people in the media trash country music and the folks who love it. We're not your enemy, but you all sure act like you want us to be." Joy straightened, regaining her edge. "Nobody here is calling you the enemy, Blake. But when you make statements that sound exclusionary, people are going to call that out." "Exclusionary?" Blake's voice rose, booming across the studio. "Lady, I've spent my entire career bringing people together through music. I've mentored singers from every background on The Voice. I've collaborated with artists across every genre you can think of. What have you done to bring people together besides divide them on this show every single day?" The audience shifted uneasily in their seats, the tension almost unbearable. Sunny Hostin tried to step in, but Joy snapped before she could. "How dare you question what I've done? I've been fighting for civil rights and equality long before you were even famous." "Fighting?" Blake barked a harsh laugh. "Is that what you call sitting at this table throwing stones at people? Because where I come from, fighting means rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty, not hiding behind a camera and running your mouth." The color drained from Joy's face. Her voice dropped, sharp and icy. "You need to watch your tone with me, young man." Blake leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Or what? You'll cancel me. You'll write some scathing hit piece about how terrible I am. Go ahead, Joy. I've been in this business long enough to know controversy only sells more records." Alyssa Farah Griffin jumped in desperately. "Blake, maybe we should talk about your charity work. You've done incredible things for disaster relief," but Blake barely glanced her way. His eyes were locked on Joy, his anger boiling over. "You know what the real problem is? You can't stand that there are still places in this country where people think differently than you. You can't stand that country music represents values and ideas that don't line up with your worldview." "That's not true," Joy protested, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it?" Blake pressed. "Then why do you and people like you keep attacking everything we stand for? Our music, our beliefs, our way of life. You act like we're some disease that needs curing." Joy's anger flared again. "Nobody is attacking your way of life, Blake, but when your way of life involves excluding people or looking down on them, yes, that's going to be criticized." "There you go again," Blake said bitterly, shaking his head. "Putting words in my mouth, making assumptions about who I am, about what I believe. You don't know me, Joy. You don't know where I come from or what I've been through. But you're damn comfortable judging me like you've got it all figured out." The control room was in chaos. Stage managers waved frantically from the wings. Producers barked orders through headsets. Live television was spiraling out of control. Joy suddenly stood, her face flushed with fury. "You want to know what I know about you, Blake? I know you've been given a platform that reaches millions and, instead of using it responsibly, you use it to spread division." Blake shot to his feet, towering over the table. "Division. That's rich coming from you. You make a living stirring up controversy every single day. At least I bring people joy with my music. What do you bring? Joy. Besides anger and resentment." "I bring truth," Joy snapped, her voice trembling. "I bring accountability, something you clearly aren't familiar with. Truth." Blake's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Your version of truth? Maybe. But here's some real truth for you. The people you claim to represent, the working class Americans you say you're fighting for, They're the same people buying my records, filling my shows, singing along to every damn word. They don't need you to speak for them. Okay, everyone, Whoopi tried again, nearly pleading. Let's just take a breath. We're adults, we can disagree without tearing each other apart. But Blake wasn't done. He leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that carried louder than his shouting ever had. You know what's sad about this whole thing, Joy? You could have had a real conversation with me today. You could have asked about the stories behind my songs. About the fans who come up to me with tears in their eyes, telling me my music helped them through hell. But no, you chose an ambush. You chose politics. You chose a fight. The studio audience sat frozen, the silence suffocating. Every camera was locked on Blake and Joy, two worlds colliding in a standoff that had gone far beyond music. Far beyond television. This was no longer an interview. This was war. Joy slowly sat back down, but her body was still rigid, her chin tilted upward in defiance. I asked you direct, legitimate questions about your own words, she said evenly, though her voice trembled under the weight of the moment. If you can't handle being questioned, maybe you shouldn't be making those statements in the first place. Blake let out a sharp breath, his voice rising again like a storm gathering force. Handle it. Lady, I can handle anything you throw at me. But I won't sit here and let you twist my words into something ugly. I've spent my whole career treating people with respect, no matter their race, politics, or background. Can you honestly say the same? The challenge hung in the air like a blade. Joy opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally managed. I've dedicated my life to fighting for equality and justice. But her conviction wasn't what it had been earlier. Your version of equality, Blake shot back. Your version of justice. But what about the millions of Americans who don't share your worldview? Where's their seat at this table? Where's their voice on this show you claim represents everybody? Sarah N. leaned in carefully, her voice soft, measured. Blake, I think what Joy is trying to say is that everyone deserves to be heard and included. Blake turned to Sarah, his expression easing just slightly. And I agree with that, Sarah, completely. But inclusion goes both ways. It means including small towns and rural communities too. It means not assuming that someone's a bigot just because they grew up in Oklahoma or Alabama. Joy's eyes flashed. Nobody's assuming anything based on where people live, aren't you? Blake pivoted back toward her, his tone sharp. Because every time country music is mentioned on this show, it comes with a smirk or a snide comment about backwards thinking. Every time someone from the South gets brought up, there's an undercurrent that they must be ignorant, or worse. Don't deny it, we all hear it. That's not true, Joy snapped back, though her protest landed flat. Drained of certainty? It absolutely is, Blake said, his voice booming now. And the cruelest irony is you're guilty of the very prejudice you claim to be fighting against. You've just decided it's socially acceptable when the target is people like me and where I come from. The studio was frozen. The audience sat silent, shoulders tight, as if afraid even to clap or shift in their seats. The hum of the cameras seemed suddenly deafening. Blake shook his head slowly, disappointment flickering beneath his anger. You know, Joy, I came here wanting a conversation, maybe even some common ground. But you didn't want that. You wanted a fight. I wanted honesty, Joy replied, her voice lower now. Defensive? No, Blake said firmly, his gaze cutting into her. You wanted a villain. And congratulations, you tried to make me one. I hope it was worth it. The words landed like a gut punch. Joy's color drained. For the first time, she looked shaken. You think I wanted this? She asked, her voice cracking. You think I enjoy confrontation? I think you thrive on it, Blake said, without missing a beat. He leaned back, but his stare never softened. Controversy is your brand. Joy. You'll manufacture it if it isn't there. That's unfair, she snapped, her voice breaking slightly. I ask the hard questions. I hold people accountable. Blake leaned forward again, lowering his tone, making it heavier, sharper. Accountable to who? To you, to this panel, or to the millions of ordinary people whose lives and values you dismiss every single day. Whoopi tried again to rescue the wreckage. All right, y'all, we're drifting way off track here. Blake, let's just bring it back to the music. But Blake wasn't done. His voice surged with conviction. You want to know what's ironic? Country music is probably the most inclusive genre there is. We sing about everybody, the farmer, the single mom, the veteran, the factory worker, the outsider trying to make something of himself. Our stories don't exclude anyone. That's what country music is, everyday people finding their voice. Joy straightened, fire flashing again. But your industry does exclude people, Blake. The numbers don't lie. The numbers, Blake repeated with a bitter laugh. That's all you've got. Numbers. But numbers don't tell you about the kid in rural Mississippi who picked up a guitar because one of my songs gave him hope. Numbers don't show you the veteran who told me my music kept him alive through PSD. Numbers don't capture the heart of this music core, the people who live it. The set was so silent now, it was suffocating. The clash, raw, real, and impossible to turn away from. Numbers don't show the dreams we inspire, Blake said, his voice cracking with conviction. They don't show the hope we give people. Hope. Joy scoffed, leaning forward. What hope are you giving young women trying to break into country music? What hope are you giving artists of color who can't even get radio play? That was it. Blake's composure shattered. He rose to his feet, the scrape of his chair echoing through the silent studio. He moved closer to Joy's side of the table, his shadow looming, though his fury was all words. You want to talk about hope? His voice thundered. I've mentored more diverse artists on The Voice than this show has probably featured in its entire run. I've lifted up people from every background imaginable. But that doesn't fit your narrative, does it? The security team in the wings stiffened, ready, but no one moved. Blake's anger was volcanic, but his hands stayed planted firmly on the table. His fight entirely verbal. Don't you dare lecture me about giving people hope. He pressed on, his voice trembling with emotion. Do you know how many letters I get from fans telling me my music helped them survive divorce, depression, losing their job, losing a loved one? Do you know how many people tell me country music literally saved their lives? Joy's defiance wavered, but she refused to back down completely. I'm not diminishing that, Blake, but you can't ignore the systemic issues in your industry. Systemic issues. Blake's voice exploded again. You want to talk about systemic issues? How about the systemic bias against country music in mainstream media? How about the way shows like this one systematically portray country fans as ignorant, backwards, stuck in the past? How about the way country artists get excluded from cultural events and award shows? The other co-hosts sat frozen, eyes wide, caught between horror and fascination. No one had ever seen the view spiral like this. You sit here in your New York bubble, Blake said, pointing toward Joy, surrounded by people who think just like you do. And you have the audacity to lecture me about inclusion? When's the last time you spent more than an hour in a small town? When's the last time you actually listened to someone who disagreed with you? I talk to people who disagree with me every day, Joy replied weakly. No. Blake's response was sharp, immediate. You argue with them. That's not the same. Talking means listening. It means respecting someone even when you don't agree with them. And nothing about this interview has felt respectful. The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras clicking as they captured every frame of this meltdown. Blake took a deep breath. his voice finally softening, though the emotion still burned in his eyes. "You know what the saddest part is, Joy? We probably agree on more than we disagree. We both care about people. We both want everyone to succeed. We both believe music and art can bring people together. But instead of finding common ground, you turn this into a battle." Joy's face had lost all its fire now. She looked genuinely shaken. "I never meant for it to go this way." "Maybe you didn't," Blake said, calmer now, but cutting with precision. "But this is what happens when every conversation becomes a fight instead of an opportunity to understand." He straightened his shirt, then turned directly to the camera. His voice carried with the weight of finality. "To everyone watching at home, this is exactly why so many Americans have lost trust in the media. Because instead of real conversations, they get ambushes. Instead of listening, they get gotcha moments. And people are sick of it." He looked back at the panel. "I came here to talk about music, about the joy it brings, about the stories, the connections, the hope. Instead, I got interrogated about politics by someone who made up her mind about me before I ever sat down." Blake Whoopi tried to cut in, her voice urgent, her hands raised as if she could physically reel him back. But Blake shut her down with a glance. "No, Whoopi. There was no miscommunication. This was deliberate. This was an ambush from the second I walked out here." And with that, he reached down, unclipped his microphone, and placed it on the table with a sharp finality. "Thanks for having me," he said flatly. "I hope your audience got what they came for." Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Not another word. Not another glance back. The studio was frozen, stunned into silence. No applause. No recovery. Just the weight of knowing that what had just happened wasn't just a bad interview. It was a breakdown of the entire talk show format. Everyone there knew they had just witnessed television history.